Welcome to Starter Pack. Today we're going to build our own database using just a very few simple tools and less than 20 lines of code that you can use on absolutely any OpenWRT system. That's right, no matter how big, no matter how small, this database system that I'm about to show you are some great techniques for any OpenWRT system that I've been using for over a decade. And I'm going to show you some of my secrets now on how I've used these embedded systems to build embedded databases on literally any device that with any amount of power. So if you're running Bash, you can do this embedded database system, and I'm going to show you some of my tricks. Let's dive in. Welcome to Starter Pack. I'm Spencer Thomason. Here at Starter Pack, we train software developers in our licensed coding boot camps and build custom software solutions for companies. With a decade of executive leadership as a fractional CTO and 25 years in software development, I've mastered transforming tech teams and products. All right, so I love using OpenWRT routers, right? They're super fun. It's one of the best Linux systems that I've really enjoyed. It's super easy, single user system, and it's great. But one of the things is a lot of times it has really limited hardware. So how do you run a database on these? You got to go across the cloud, and that gets really complicated, and you got to make sure you go across the wire, and then what if it's online, and yada, 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 right? So you got a lot of systems. I'm going to show you a trick for how you can build a database on absolutely any OpenWRT system. So let's dive in. I'm going to get set up here, and let me switch over my screens. Okay, so I'm signed into my OpenWRT router. Now, first of all, the router that I'm using here is a FreeMesh router, and this is FreeMesh Wireless. I'm going to pull this up on the screen here because you've got to check these routers out. So FreeMesh routers are awesome because they're the only open source mesh package you can find, and they now offer Wi-Fi 6 technology, and it's super fast. I mean, if you're running wireless, like this is going to be your go-to, right? It comes with three pieces. So it's got the router and 2 nodes that come with it, and you can buy additional nodes. This actually will so if you've got one router, you can see it won't cover your home. Whereas with the mesh systems, it's going to cover your whole home. It's super easy, crazy fast, and better yet, it is open source. Did I mention it's open source? It's using OpenWRT. Don't believe me? Boom, right here. You've got the open source. You can build the source code yourself. You can tweak it. You can modify it. Whatever. Like this is a great system, super fast hardware. And if you're not and if you want a great router, this thing is crazy fast. It's got dual core 1.3 gigahertz chipset here with 256 megs of RAM. Tons of space. So this is the system that I'm using here. So as I'm going through this system today, this is on a FreeMesh system here. So I've set up some files here. I used AI to generate some files. So I created a startup pack folder here. So if we go into our startup pack folder here, you can see that I've got some sample files here, right? So we can see that I have 3 different sizes of files, one that has 100, one that has 10K, and one that has 1,000,000. But I'm going to tell you about how I created these files and what we did to get these files set up. So first of all, we're going to start with how to create our database, right? And we're going to then work on inserting to the database. Then we're going to query from the database and then update fields on the database. So all of this we're going to do with 20 lines of code. Super easy, and you can run this on absolutely any router that out there with OpenWRT. Now, so I've SSH'd into the router, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep our database here very simple. So we're going to say we have like a contact list where you need to store first name, last name, email, phone number, and position, right? So these are super simple. So like if I was going to do this for my contact information would look like this, right? Spencer Thomason, Spencer@starterpack.com. Here's Starter Pack phone number, and I'm the founder, right? So that's what mine would look like. Now, I had the AI generate these for me, but let's go ahead and start off with how we would do the very first one. So we're going to create a variable named first name. We're going to do Bob Jones as the last name. We're going to give him a startup hack email here and create that. We're going to give him the phone number, make sure it's formatted nicely. Oops, except that I forgot my quote at the end. And then, so let's try that again, and this time with the quote. And then we're going to also give him the position of sales. So this is going to be Bob Jones from sales. All right. Now, if I echo this out, you'll see that what this does is this is creating what you may say, now, Spencer, that's just a common separated list, right? So if I echo this out, it's like Bob Jones, and the email, phone number, and sales, right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to echo this out to contact.txt. Now, what you name the file doesn't really matter, and the permissions of this doesn't matter. So this now, if you'll notice, has created, and we just created our database by inserting the very first row into the database. Now, if I want to actually create multiple of these rows, we can. And now you'll see if I cat out our contacts, you can see that we've created 2 lines of this, right? Now we can go into something like VI, and we can edit this if we need to. Generally speaking, you're not going to really edit your database, but in our case, we're just going to go ahead and delete this because we don't want to, have 2 rows here. So we're just going to go ahead and finish that up. So now we've just now created our database, and if I want to go find this, and so I'm going to go ahead and start using my sample files from here because these were actually generated. So let's kind of give an example of what this first sample file here was, right? So this is actually the contents of that first sample file. And I had some AI generate these and uploaded them. But again, this isn't hard. You would create this the same way by doing these echoes out to this. Now, one other note with the echo command here, if you're new to Linux here, and if you do an echo with 2 of these carets, it's going to append to the line. If you only do 1, it's going to replace the whole file with what you just echoed to the file. So note, 1 replaces 2, appends to the end of the file. Now, what we want to do is, so let's say, hey, show me how this file is now becoming a database, right? So this is a sample database, which is really just a comma separated list, right? So this is a comma separated list. And what we've got here then is, let's go ahead and say that I want to find Spencer in here, right? So I say grep, except it helps if I can type, say grep, Spencer from, what's the name of our file? Forgot the names of our files. So we're going to say grep, quote Spencer, and we're going to say from output, let's just do the 100 one, right? Okay. Now, apparently there's no Spencer in this, so we should probably find that. Now, there is actually a Spencer in here, but in this case, we didn't find it because we weren't searching with case insensitive. So let's put -i in here. And apparently we don't have Spencer in there. Let me find a good example here really quick. Actually, we can just scroll up here. Let's go find Riley. Okay, so Riley was a good example here. Let's go with Riley, but with a lowercase, right? So there was apparently no Spencer in there. So let's find a Riley, but we're gonna do it with lowercase, which there actually wasn't. So if you use the -i command here, you can see that it's gonna find all the Rileys that were in the database with this I, even though it was case insensitive. Now, if we want to get the line number, we can do the same thing, but we can say, hey, I want to also do it and tell me what line numbers these are on. Now you can see at the front of this, we have line 40 and we have line 70, right? So these are the line numbers that these ones were on, okay? Now we can also do both where it's doing case insensitive and I. So you can actually stack these commands, right? So this is like a select statement that you would do. Now, this also works if we're going to go against a database with 1 million lines in it. So let's do our test here for David with one that has 1 million lines. That's a lot, right? So there's a ton of examples here in our million, a lot of Davids. And I can hit Control C to stop that. Now you can see that it comes back with a ton. And so let's say we want to just get the first David that's in the database of 1 million here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to grep for David with the -i for case insensitivity, search for David against this file that has 1 million rows in it. And then I'm going to do the bar and do head N1. What this will do is it'll give me the first example that we find of this. Now you can see that came back really quick. Now again, this is on embedded Linux on a router using this. And so this is every bit as good as a database, right? That was super quick. You want to see how quick? Let's do our time command in front of it, right? So that was 0.01 millisecond. Like this is a 1/10 of a second hundredth of a second. This came back in to find me the first instance of David out there. Okay, let's say you want to find the last instance, right? We switch this guy around to tail. Boom. Now tail's taking me a little longer because I had to go through that whole list first, right? So tail's going to be a little bit slower than your head because the head's going to find the first one, match it, and return it. So tail's got to go through and find every single one, match to the last one, and then come back. Now again, on an embedded router here, while this is running, because I'm doing this real time here, folks, while this is running, my suggestion is that you really want to say 100,000 is about the limit where I would do this, and that's why. See, because that's real time. It took us 24 seconds to find the last one, so that's pretty intense, right? Like that's definitely longer than we would normally want something computing. So your million is really kind of at the the top end of what you would want to do. But let's look at this with something that has 10,000 rows, because again, on a router, you're not going to really do a whole lot more with more than 10,000 rows. That comes back in a quarter of a second. So you can definitely see we hit some level of compute limitations, but again, it did work. And even if I wanted to find all the Davids on here, or if I was looking for something a little more specific, it will come back with just the first one, right? Now, you say that's not super helpful because I want to actually be able to find just like the email, right? So let me find an example here of the David, and I'm going to switch out one thing here from my notes. We're going to switch this to the 10K, right? And let's go with the 10K example. And what this is going to read as is I want to find the David that's case insensitive, and I want to find the last David, right? And I'm going to give we're going to use awk now. So now we're using this awk command. And what this reads as is it says, hey, the delimiter that we want to use is the comma, right? So it's going to find me the third field and print out the third field using the comma as the delimiter, right? So find me the last tail out of 10,000, third field. And it returns that email. So this is actually going to find the email address, the last email address of David. Now, the name David is probably not a super great key. So let's flip this around a little bit to something that might be a little bit more useful and say we want to, that given this email address here, right, we actually want to find the phone number, okay? So we know the phone number is the fourth field. So we're going to change this to the fourth field. Boom. We just got the phone number based off that email address. You can start to see where this starts to get really handy. Given a phone number or given an email address, what's the phone number, right? Or say, hey, I want to get the first and last name. You can actually say first name. See if I can remember my syntax here for awk without notes here. And look at that. We got first name, last name with space in the middle, even formatted, right? So this will give you the opportunity to then work and to build a query. So we're actually building some pretty extensive queries on this now. Now you say that's all great and all, but what happens if I need to update one of these? Well, let's just get right to that, shall we? So let's see how many David Kings there are in here. I think there is quite a few of these. And so what we're going to do here is I'm going to actually set my email variable, because we're going to actually set email variable to Bob Jones at Startup Hack. Okay. Then I'm going to actually do this, and I'm going to explain this command before I execute it here. So what we're going to use the sed command. So this is sed with a dash I. The dash I means change this in place. We're going to use the S, okay, for the string match. So do a string match on David, right, on David King. And anywhere you find this example of davidking.com, replace it with bobjones at startuphack.com. And we'll change this. Now, before I run this, I'm going to hit Control-C. Actually, I didn't execute that. Let's actually do a grep and see how many of these we have with David, with this David King example, so we can see how many of these we're going to replace. Okay, so let's do that. Grep I David King. Let's put that guy in quotes because it might delimit against it. And then let's check against output for our 10K output. Right. All right. So there's only one of these here. So it looks like there's a full stack software developer called David King. So we've only got one in our 10,000 list file, right? Now I'm going to actually say, let's go ahead and replace this David King here. Okay. So we're going to say, look, this is going to replace David King with the email variable, right? Boom. So how long is that going to take? And remember, this is replacing inline. Oh, I did against the 1 million. That's not the one we wanted to do. We know that one's a little slow for these routers. Again, your limit on these is going to be like 100K. It is doable. It does work. It doesn't crash or anything. But you see how fast that one was. So that one was super, super fast, like crazy fast. You saw that came back in just milliseconds. Now, if I want to do that same search that we did before and see if we can find any of these, we don't find any of them. But if I do that same grep for, let's see how many startuphack.coms we have, right? Startup, if I can type, startuphack.com. Okay, so we've got just that one. You can see now that this swapped out for that. So you can see that with the sed command, it did really quick. Now, if you want to see how fast this thing can go, let's actually put a timer on it this time. So this time what we're going to do, we're going to actually change the email and change it back to, so we're going to say the first string is the email, and then we're going to change it back to david.king, at example.com. bar. And so I'm using these bars as the delimiters here. A lot of people will use backslashes. I kind of like the bars. It's just a personal preference. So we're going to put the time command in front of this to see how long that take. Boom, like a 1/10 of a second. 10,000, found it, replaced it, all in line. Boom, you've got an update with a very simple command. So we've now shown a query. We've shown a query of all. We've shown a query of first, query of last, query. We've done a replace. You're like, okay, now let's do a delete, right? So now I just want to delete. So let's actually replace this back again. So actually let's say that I want to just delete David King. Let's say we want to delete this one, and I'm just going to modify this command because I'm a lazy typer. I'm definitely the definition of lazy typer. So I'm going to do sed -i here, right? Now, what I'm going to change this out to is a couple of things. The delete command doesn't really seem to like my bars very well, and this is a personal preference. But what I'm going to do is use backslashes here. Then we're going to use the D for the D option here, right? And this D is going to say delete all the David Kings out of this, okay, out of that file. And we're going to see how fast I can do this, right? So, boom. Again, less than 1/10 of us, like right around a 1/10 of a second here. We did that. Let's see if we can find any more. Let's grep to see if we can find any more of those. There's none of them left. We deleted them all. This will actually delete more than one. So if we actually were to input to echo this back, right? If we were to echo this in, 10 times, and if there were 10 of these, it would delete any reference of all of those. Now, if you want to get into where you can delete the first one, you can. It gets a little bit crazy. Now, you're like, okay, that's great, but I would just want to replace one field in my file, right? Okay, so let's first here start off by checking out, and let's grep for Spencer in this file. Let's see if there's any Spencers that exist in here. Nope, there's not. So let's try, let's see here. Let's see if there's one in our 100 file. I think there might be one in our 100 file. Oh, looks like we don't have any Spencers. Let me add some really quick here, and then we'll, or actually, you know what? Let's just find something that in our 10K here file. Let's find our 10K file. Let's just, let's cat some of this. Actually, what we can do here is we can do tail, dash, let's find the last 100, do n 100 of those, okay? So this is great here. Let's grab Lincoln Carter. So we want to take Lincoln Carter here. So Lincoln Carter here, as we can see, so let's do grep I Lincoln Carter from our output 10K. Great. Those are all of our Lincoln Carters. So anywhere that we have Lincoln Carter, we want to take his phone number and change it to the starter pack phone number. All these Lincoln Carters now work for startup pack. We want to replace those, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, we're going to take our phone to replace, and I'm going to actually copy this one. This is a little bit longer command here, and I'll explain this command here in a second. So we're going to create a variable called phone to replace. We're going to do these backticks, and this actually says execute these in place, right? And then return the result and put it into this variable here, right? So we're going to say grep I, except we're not going to check here because, again, there wasn't a Spencer here. So we're going to find, what were we doing? Lincoln.Carter, right? So let's use this one and copy that in because I'm a lazy typer, like I said. We're going to change this to our 10K. And what we're going to do is we're going to do cut of D and say the delimiter is the comma, and we want field number 4, right? So now if I echo phone to replace, except I forgot my $sign. See, I'm real for you here, guys. Raw. We're raw and real. These are all the phones that it wants to replace. Now, I only really want to replace the first of these. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to kind of cheat this just a little bit here. And you could normally do this, and then you could say, in fact, let's just do this. Let's do this, and then we're going to say head N1. Okay, and now let's echo that back out. So now we can see that's the phone number we're going to replace here, right? So we only want to replace the first instance of this Lincoln Carter, right, where this phone exists. And once you have this, then you could just go and replace it. So we're going to say that's the phone number that we want to replace, right? And so if I echo the phone to replace, which we just did, now I'm going to replace, so we're going to set a variable here of the phone for, we're going to call it a starter pack phone equals 520, 201. Oops, I don't have my format right. 201-8020. Okay. So that's our, oops, not backticks, because that's trying to execute that. See, guys, I'm real and raw here for you. Okay. Now we've set our starter pack phone here, right? So this is our starter pack phone. And then what we're going to do is we're going to, and I'll explain this command here, even though I'm copying and pasting it. So we are said replace in line with the string phone to replace and the phone number that, and so we want to change this to sh phone, and we're going to change it on our 10K. Boom. Now, if we go and grep our Lincoln Carter again here, you can see that we changed out this first one here to the starter pack phone number. Voila. We just did an update, right, guys? Pretty simple. We're at only about 20 lines of code. I don't even know if we're at 20 lines of code. I think we're even less than that. So you can see this is really, really, really simple. Now, I want to kind of show you how this scales, because this database does scale. You will hit some scale limits. So, I want to be real and be raw here. And so let's do some checks here. And let me check really quick to see what values we have in each of these. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I got our examples ready here, but I want to be real and show you the real times and see where things really start to scale. So with 100 values, 100 rows in our database here, you can see that this returns an example of getting the phone number, trying to match against natalie.rodriguez@example.com and returning this value in literally so fast that it didn't even measure, right? So less than 1/100th of a second. Now, as we get to 10K, we can see that, this is still about 1/10 of a second. And so in my other tests, when we get to 100K, we start to see it about double. So it'd get to about 1/5 of a second. Now, as we start to get upwards of about 200 to 300K is when I start to see things really start to chug and slow down. So this one's on 1,000,000 lines, right? So pretty big jump from our 10K to 1,000,000 lines here, right? And you can see it chugging through pretty quick, and it's going to take about 20 seconds if I remember my test right here. And so definitely at 1,000,000, this becomes long enough that I'm not sure that it's super realistic for a program to be running against. But definitely if you're getting into, if you're staying in the hundreds of thousands, so 21 seconds here, right? And again, depending on your use case here, and there might be some things that we could definitely do to optimize this, like doing row indexes and stuff like that. And you can get more fancy with this. But what I'm trying to demonstrate for you here, guys, is that you can see that speed only goes up very marginally between 100 and 10,000, right? That's really the thing that I wanted to explain here, is that as we get to this 100 and this and 10,000, even as we go to 100,000, and 100,000 is a pretty good sized database for an embedded device, right? As we do this, you can see that we're only going up very slowly magnitude, and I think it's up to about a 1/5 of a second for 100,000. And so you can see this gets plenty fast enough to be able to perform on an OpenWRT hardware, right? And so you can create a database on absolutely any system and use this to be able to drive your systems forward. And that's pretty awesome when you stop and really think about it, is the ability to not have to install a database, have the overhead of the database running, have to be able to use things across the wire. This allows you to embed some database to be able to search against it. And I showed you with any Linux system, but any OpenWRT system specifically, that we have our good friends echo, grep, sed, awk, and cut. And you can see that these are super fast with really 100,000 lines is pretty good, right? And the width of the file actually doesn't even matter here, right? So I'm sure it would slow down as you get into large data sets, but Now, curious to see what you think. I get that a lot of people just run to like to try to run like SQLite, but a lot of OpenWRT systems have a really limited system. So this is a great simple way that you can build an embedded database to store data on your system that your programs can run against. And I've been using this system for over a decade. It runs great, it's stable, and it works well over time. And it's crazy fast, and again, less than 20 lines of code. Now, what are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you think I'm crazy? I'd love to have a great discussion. So make sure you leave a comment down below. Also, make sure to check out FreeMesh Wireless. They're fantastic. It's the best and only open source router that is on the market. And I just can tell you these are crazy fast. Some of the best routers I've ever worked with in over a decade of working with routers. FreeMesh Wireless gives you full control and open access to their systems. So make sure you check them out. Also, if you want to get into software development here at Starter Pack, we love to train software developers in our licensed coding boot camps. So make sure you check out this offer that we've got here at the end for you.
Want to become a software developer but don't want to spend 4 years in college and rack up massive student loan debts? Think you need technical expertise to get started? Welcome to Starter Pack, a better way to start your software career without student loans and years without income. One-on-one tutoring is included so you never get stuck and have guidance through the whole process. No technical experience is necessary. Learn at your own pace and in your own space. Starter Pack has worked with local state agencies in your area to make it so that qualifying students can get the program costs covered entirely and students can start earning while they learn.
Hi, I'm Jacob, and I completed the full stack development course offered by Startup Hack. One thing setting Startup Hack apart from any other coding bootcamp was the quality of one-on-one tutoring available. All of the projects that we did were challenging and thought-provoking, but left me feeling very accomplished and very prepared for my first job that I was offered just days after completing the program.
Hello, I'm Tom, and I completed the full stack development course offered by Starter Pack, and I must say that it was an excellent experience. The tutors is what set this course apart from others. They were knowledgeable, experienced, and always available to help provide me with guidance and support. Do not hesitate to take advantage of this affordable and efficient software development course.
Complete our 3-month coding bootcamp, gain hands-on experience, and land a paid internship. With 2 years of experience on average, our graduates are making over $80,000 per year. The 3-month program includes technologies from Microsoft, Google, and Facebook. No debt, just a quick path to earning. Check out startuphack.com to code your future and start today.